Welcome to Spooky Stories. We're your hosts, Jackie and Martha. For the next 11 days leading up to Halloween, we'll be sharing spooky stories, but not always spooky, from books and periodicals within the collections here at Seton Hall University. We'll start off with reading the story, and then we'll follow it up with some commentary. It is day 9 of Spooky Stories, and we are bringing you The Stolen Child, a poem by William Butler Yeats.
Where dips the rocky highland of Sleuth Wood in the lake, there lies a leafy island where flapping herons wake. The drowsy water rats, there we've hid our fairy vats, full of berries and of reddest stolen cherries. Come away, O human child, to the woods and water wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Where the wave of moonlit glosses the dim gray sands with light, far off by furthest Rosses, we foot it all the night. Weaving olden dances, mingling hands and mingling glances, till the moon has taken flight. To and fro we leap and chase the frothy bubbles, while in the world is full of troubles, and in anxiousness we sleep. Come away, O human child, to the woods and waters wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Where the wandering water gushes from the hills above Glencar, in pools among the rushes that scarce could bathe a star. We seek for slumbering trout, and whisper in their ears, we give them evil dreams, leaning softly out. From the ferns that drop their tears of dew on the young streams. Come, O human child, to the woods and water wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Away with us he's going, the solemn-eyed child. He'll hear no more of the lowing of the calves on the warm hillside, or the kettle on the hob singing peace into his breast, or see the brown mice bob round and round the oatmeal chest. For he comes, the human child, to the woods and water wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than he can understand.
This comes from Irish Fairy and Folktale, selected and edited with introductions by William Butler Yeats, with illustrations by James Torrance, and published in London by Walter Scott. However, the date is unknown. This is a beautiful copy with an illustrated cover and spine, and was also previously owned by someone named Dorothy Jackson. And the book covers fairies, ghosts, witches, and fairy doctors, the devil, giants, kings and queens, priests and saints, and of course the changelings, which was read by Jenna Leese, who is also here with us, along with our repeat commentators. So everyone introduce yourselves, please.
As mentioned, I'm Jenna Leese. I work upstairs in the collection development team.
I'm Natalie Lau, I'm the scholarly communications librarian.
I'm Michael Murphy. I'm the diplomacy librarian.
I'm Quinn Christie, the public services archivist.
I'm Laura Hapke, the collections manager.
All right.
And I'm Martha.
One of them.
Hi, Martha.
It's only day 9, but you are the special collections assistant.
I am the special collections assistant.
We never said that, and I'm the technical services archivist.
Yeah, we're doing, day 9. Here we go.
We'll formally introduce ourselves. Hello. All right,
Yeah.
but changelings. So Jenna, take it away, because you remember we talked about this at some point.
We did talk about this at some point. The changelings. I mean, I'm familiar from, and I think I mentioned this too, from more of a fantasy D&D background.
I was just gonna say.
And I think that they do a really good job at pulling from the original lore. And it's really, so changelings are like fae fairy creatures that will take sickly children or children who are being mistreated, and they'll lure them to the woods, and they will either replace them with one of their own, or Jackie, I love this, a log of wood.
A log of wood.
We got a kick out of that one. So that's like one of the two options. And I think like the idea is like and they'll put like some magic over the log of wood and kind of glamour it so that, you know, the townsfolk can't tell the difference between a sickly child stuck in bed and a log of wood.
Is that what happened to the log lady in Twin Peaks?
I didn't watch Twin Peaks.
Oh
Wait,
my
which
God,
one's-
my
I wouldn't be
favorite show
surprised. I mean, a lot of
all
the
time. I never thought about it like
But
that.
she's
Me
holding
neither.
the log like her baby.
Yeah.
The whole time.
There's a
No,
glamour
her
on
husband
it.
isn't her husband who died. He was like a woodsman, and he died, and his spirit was trapped in the log, and that's
This is also
how
going
she
into
talked
Pinocchio.
to. How she
A
talked
little
to
bit,
him.
yeah.
Oh.
That's what I
Spirits
thought
trapped
it
in
Well,
was.
I think it also like has to do a lot with like folklore of like back in the day, mothers hysterical, like they can't recognize their own children, and oftentimes it's like the
Yeah.
mother who will first realize like, this isn't my child, you're a fae, get away from me, and the rest of the town under the glamour will be like, this woman's crazy, like that's their child. So it really plays into the whole like hysterical like woman kind of a thing
Yeah.
back in, you know, ancient days and today.
She's like, this is a log. And
This
they're
is
like,
a-
no,
and you're like,
this
no,
is
it's
your
not.
child.
or this is not my child, this is a replacement, because it would be either log of wood or a fair, like one of their own, the changeling.
Isn't this something that they do a lot in like crime shows? Like Criminal Minds had one where like
Whoa.
they have brain trauma and then
Right.
like they think that their family are imposters, but then like when they only hear their voices, they're like
that's
my
like
wife."
that's like
Yeah.
a very rare actual like imposter.
Well, this was
syndrome
also
thing.
the plot, which was, I think it was a true story. Also, the movie Changeling with Angelina
Mhm.
Jolie, who her child went missing, and then they brought back another kid. Like the police were like, "Oh, we found your son."
That
and she
was
was
based
like,
on a
"That's-
true crime,
that
real
was a
true
real
crime
thing
story.
that happened." She was like, "No, this isn't my kid," and they're like, "Yeah, he is crazy." And
It turned out to be like a
that's-
much older kid, like
It
just
was a much
needing a
older
family.
kid.
Yeah, it was like a really like weird situation.
Yeah.
And so, but back to the
So
like the
believe
changeling of
women is what
folklore.
we're saying.
We'll get into Jackie and I love how they would determine they weren't changeling. They would throw the child onto the fire.
Oh, it's giving
Oh.
Wait. Festus.
It's giving log.
It's giving witch trials. It's giving apparently if it is a fae or fairy, they will immediately leap out of the fire and be unharmed.
What's a normal kid gonna do?
Burn like the witches.
Actually,
I have
Wait,
There's a quote in the book.
I actually have a quote, and you weren't here for that episode, but it's from Mother Wild, right?
Oh yeah, we love her.
Oh my
Yeah.
god! Shout out Mother Wild.
Because
Love ya.
all
for
these-
those of you who have been sticking with us since episode 3.
So basically, it's many things can be done to find out in a child changeling. To find out in a child that okay, I'm
grammar
sorry.
was not standardized.
Many things can be done to find out in a child a changeling, but there is one infallible thing. Lay it on the fire with this formula: burn, burn, burn. If one, the devil, burn, but if of God and the saints, be safe from harm. So they're not burning,
Oh.
but the changeling will burn and run up the chimney.
Okay, so your option is
So
It
Santa
still
Claus.
seems unsafe to toss your child
yeah,
in the
like
fire.
I said, it has a lot to do with like fire was seen as the cleansing.
The
cleansing
And
thing.
if you are a holy person, especially coming
Yeah.
from Irish folklore, that God would protect you. Same thing with like a woman who's not really a witch or things like that. I think fire was their go-to.
It was in Edinburgh.
I feel like water would be more reliable.
That was in Salem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose. I guess the symbolism of the burning log.
Well, maybe if it was holy water.
Yeah, that's the
Oh,
thought. You know,
okay.
and you know, you have
Yeah,
your
just
priest
splash some
splash the
water on
water,
Yeah.
and then have some fun, and you know, repeat baptism.
I mean, and then there's the question of like, what did these fae want with these children? And there's two pronged options.
yeah.
There's one where it was a very nice and wholesome thing where they would take these sickly children to a better place and they would play in the fields and the woods for the rest of their life.
Is that not?
And then there's the second option where they would like take them to be like slaves to like the fae queen of the courts.
Yeah.
That's
I assumed
Wait, did you
Food.
mention?
Or food might also be an option. Food, slave, you know, there's like two beliefs of it where it's like good and live in eternal happiness, or bad, live in slavery and or cannibalism.
Well, the
Isn't
poem
cannibalism
itself is
fake?
like, I read the poem
Yeah.
and I was like, this sounds great. like yeah, let me follow this fairy
Well, I guess
into the woods so I can forget about, all the troubles of the world and stuff.
But
I
it
wasn't the
also goes
smartest
into
kid.
like, I think talking about like a lot of the Fae courts about eternally trapping people there in youth and dancing
Yeah.
all night and living your life away where like time works differently.
Yeah.
And there are also stories where like they would dance until their feet bled, but they didn't know because they were enchanted by the Fae courts and things like that.
Right.
I was in a court of whatever, Akatar.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I get deep into those.
Yeah.
There were actual historical dancing plagues.
Yeah.
Yes. Like the
60s.
dancing plague.
Yeah.
But it's just like the idea of, is it actually good or is it an eternal torment where it's like you forget, and then some stories are like they forget about food and necessities and they will starve because they don't want to do anything else
I
but
feel like it's the second one. This one that you're
this
describing.
one. Yeah. So like these are just questions.
Mhm.
So based on the poem alone and the book, it talked about doing that only to sickly children. And I think like, more current popular culture or
Yeah.
further folklore, take it the step further with just like stealing children in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I talked to Jackie about my first introduction was the Witcher games, where the changelings would replace the people and they would, murder them in the woods, but then they would like live their lives
As
as
the people
them
they
because they
murdered.
are just looking for a place in society that they don't have. So again, it's an algorithm, wow. An allegory for, people outside of the norm, people
Mhm.
with disabilities, people who don't fit in with this desire to just blend in and
Yeah.
live a normal life.
I also read that in doing some like research on changelings that a couple things that it also affected not just children but women too. Like husbands would be like,
That's not my wife.
again,
You're not my
if-
wife.
if you're not my wife because you're, talking back or like exhibiting these behaviors that isn't typical for a woman to do. So it's like, oh, she must be replaced. She must be
Changelings
bewitched.
are very catch-22 for
And-
anyone who's like, you're
Yeah.
acting weird. You're not this real person. You're
Yeah.
not my mother. You're not my wife.
I have
You're
the
not my
right to
child.
kill you.
Anyone who's in a more subservient kind of position.
Yeah.
And it proved me wrong, jump into that fire.
Jump into that fire, and if you're dead, then okay,
I was wrong.
I was wrong. Whoops. Or if you're alive, but they also do burn
Fantastic
though too.
consequences.
Well, the changeling would burn.
The changeling
the
still
person.
Well, if you
who-
survive, I guess you would just have like burn scars.
Well,
but
no,
you'll be alive.
because you're supposed to
Yeah.
be
Well, if you're
protected.
what? Not necessarily.
I also read
Wait,
that
what are we talking
an
about?
obvious-
So it's still
No.
changing.
Yeah. and like signs to see if your child is a changeling was that if it grows a beard or has long teeth.
Love it.
Long teeth, it's like
Oh,
what?
so now we're
Love
vampires.
It's so funny. Or that also if the child is far more intelligent than other kids their age or possesses unusual insight, which I thought was
Oh.
interesting.
Right, because a changeling is like just
A,
short.
a behavioral tool kind
Yeah.
of as well. Actually, so my friend Amber, shout out Amber, she has been listening to this podcast and she told me, so her family, her mother's side of the family is from Scotland.
Yeah.
And she has traced like her roots back to like the 1500s and in like the Scottish Highlands or whatever. And so her mom would grow up hearing a lot of stories like about fae and warnings and stuff like that. And even as a child, her mom would be like, oh, you can't dress up like a fairy. You can't like do that because of these fears that it's going to attract a
It
fae.
invites them
It invites
to
them
your
to
home.
come and, they're going to harm you or steal you. So I thought that it permeates even to today's culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
supervision.
honestly, still today, no one wants a log for a baby.
Yeah. And that is really the moral of this story.
I-
That's the moral of the
so-
story.
Well, I have to mention Winx because they had the cartoon, but then they did live action, which apparently Michael says was awful, but I enjoyed it. And the main
Winx.
character, she was a changeling, so she finds out that she's a fire fairy, which I think is interesting since that's how you test.
That,
Is this the
oh,
Netflix
yeah.
one?
I think
I
so.
think it is on Netflix, yeah.
Okay, I did watch
Michael has a
That's again
vehemently
another show that I
dislikes
haven't
it.
watched. Every
I-
show
I
that
didn't
gets brought
watch
up.
it.
I watched the cartoon as a kid.
I just assumed it was.
Oh wait,
I love
wait.
it.
Say
There was a cartoon.
Winx.
Winx.
W-I-N-X. Yes,
Yeah.
I
The
remember. I
French
had
cartoon.
a doll.
Yeah.
I still have that.
I had a McDonald's one on a keychain.
Yeah.
And then apparently they made a live action movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As they did
And
everything.
TV series.
Netflix
Sorry,
series.
I forget what the main character's name is, but it's something
Yeah.
related.
How
Bloom, yeah.
do I know this?
I don't know.
Breaking gender norms.
She has like this fiery red hair, and then like I think she gets like whisked away into the fairy world or whatever, and then is told, "Oh, you're a changeling. Oh, well, here attend fairy school," and she like does really badly because like she wasn't raised with her powers. But then I'm gonna spoil the show for anyone that hasn't watched. It turns out she's an ancient fairy, and that she was like somehow sent into the modern day or whatever, and time like is wonky, so that's why she's like in the modern day now or something. Yeah.
Huh.
I liked it. It got canceled, so apparently I'm in the minority there, but whatever.
Oh man.
I don't know, but like quickly coming back to real life and people still to this day believing in
Yeah.
this. It's why you often see in like the Highlands of Scotland
Yeah.
and Ireland, fairy face circles, and it's like you don't,
Yes.
you're not supposed to touch
You can't
them.
cross them.
Don't cross them. Don't break
it.
them. Like you
Yeah.
see these really like real superstitious things. I mean,
I mean, it's terrifying. It's
Yeah.
like
But a circle of mushrooms to begin with, it's kind of just creepy.
yeah,
Yeah.
a perfect circle
Yeah,
growing.
like, it's just too
so
weird.
again, my curiosity though, like I think that's so cool. I'm like,
It is, but
let
I'm
me,
just
especially as a kid, I
That's
would just be running around.
the temptation of the fae.
That is what I'm saying.
You
I
are
am going-
vulnerable to being a fae now.
So
Are you a log of wood?
I know it's getting on my head. Sometimes I wonder. Sometimes
For our
there's not
podcast
a
listeners,
thought.
Martha was knocking on her head to
Yeah.
see if she was a log of wood.
There was no sound made.
But no, it's the temptation. The temptation is there. It's real. But I didn't know about the log of wood. That's like, I feel like they started off so strong. It's like, oh, it's an exact replica of your child.
Well, I learned about the log of wood from
or
reading
we're
the
gonna
story
give
for
you
this
some
podcast.
wood,
And it looks like
and
you know,
you're not gonna know.
the collection. You know, the editor of the story, he kind of put together multiple different
Yeah.
folklores, and so he mentioned both
Mhm.
as like some believe in this, some believe in that, and I think like I find it so interesting, and this has to do with any folklore, that like such similar stories could pop up like almost identical in such
Yeah.
different parts of the world with such limited communication to each other.
Exactly.
Like I think like changeling stories have been seen in parts of Africa and parts of Ireland and Scotland and Germany and all these different cultures have it.
Yeah.
It
Similar
feels
to
like
the
a-
banshee
The
that we were
banshee.
talking
Yeah,
about.
other one.
too.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Too.
changeling
Moving
mythology
away.
feels like a really
Oh,
familiar anxiety.
Mhm.
Like when I was really little, I remember being scared that somebody was like switching some of my stuff with exactly replicas that weren't the same thing.
Oh.
I must have had
Anxious.
problems as a child. I
Anxious
was a very anxious
girl.
child. But yeah, I feel like that's something that people do when they're like really stressed out about something that's an easy place to go. And you also get like more modern ones like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you were reminding me of there's this French court case from the Middle Ages about this man named Martin Guerre.
Yes.
There's a pretty famous book about it by a historian. It's called The Return of Martin Guerre.
It was Natalie Zeman Davis.
Oh
She's
yeah, there was
recently
also
passed. Yeah.
there was a movie
yeah
about it
It's
a long
French
time
movie,
ago.
too.
Yeah, it's a
you can
old
watch
French
it
movie.
subtitles. It's actually pretty good.
But it's based on a real medieval French court case of this man who goes off to war, and from his wife's perspective, he comes back and they go back to their happy little life together. And then the real Martin Guerre comes back like 10 years later, and he's like, "Who the heck is that?" And
Oh
this
my God,
man's
like
just been
Don
living his
Draper.
life.
Yeah, it's a court
Just
case
like Don
because
Draper.
the wife is under trial because to everyone else it looks like she's like cheating on her husband, and I
Yeah,
think
they're like,
kids,
you should have
too, with
known that it
with the
wasn't
fake.
the same guy.
That
but
is a little.
there's
That is a little
No, I mean there's obviously like modern
sketchy.
interpretations of what happened, but yeah.
and there's just so much evidence about it because there was a court case, so you
Yeah.
have all of these
And it
depositions.
was like in
the
like
book is
pretty
fascinating.
Oh, I need
rural
to get
too.
in
It
on
was
that.
like
Yeah.
Natalie's in
You
Davis,
can,
like she like dug through the
get it
archives.
through
Yeah,
in
it's
the
an
library
itsy
loan.
bitsy little.
Shout
yeah.
out.
Natalie
Yeah,
Zayman
shout out
Davis.
to
Yes, that's her
Nicola.
name. You said that like 3 times before I.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
that's
in
her
my
name.
head because
Looks
she's
like an
Natalie,
Leisure
or it was
collection.
Natalie, and I'm
Yeah.
Natalie.
Oh yeah.
And she was also in
Cross
Toronto
reference,
on my yeah, she was at Princeton, my boss at Princeton, but did grad school at Toronto. So
Yeah. Oh, also appropriately, she wrote a different book called Fiction in the Archives, which is about people lying in testimonies in, again, French court cases. She's a great author. So
yeah.
highly recommend.
Yeah, check it out.
All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I feel like it makes sense that that's something that people would maybe get scared of, that things are being replaced because
Also,
Yeah.
I mean, even
Weird
more
stuff
contemporary Marvel. Isn't that a thing too?
who?
Scrolls.
Yeah.
Oh,
With the-
Marvel Cinematic
I know
Universe.
nothing.
Oh.
The Scrolls. And it's a whole it's like a space alien people that
Yeah.
shape change and take over and replace the Avengers, and it's a cool storyline that they're starting, I guess, in the MCU. I've kind of dropped off
Yeah,
with
I
it,
think
so
it-
I
I
think
think
they're
it-
just starting that. But
I'm
originally
confused about
Fantastic
that
Four.
line, honestly.
Oh.
I know my original comic book, but stories like this and more can be found in the Leisure Collection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do a little cross promotion. We have a bunch of like spooky Halloween books that you guys can check out.
Yeah, we'll have a book
Mhm.
list out
Yes.
soon. Too.
Oh, it's up. It's
it
up
is
actually.
Yeah. Check it out.
Check it out on our Instagram. We have it linked in a highlighted story. We're also on, I don't think I've mentioned this, but we're also on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, aka X or whatever it's called now.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one with the tweeting.
You guys should make a blue sky.
Under university libraries, Seton Hall University libraries. That's it for today's episode of Spooky Stories. We are your hosts, Jackie and Martha. If you enjoyed Spooky Stories, be sure to share and follow us on social media at SHU_libraries. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive and remember, the library holds more than just books. Some stories may linger long after the lights go out.